Ronen Shehman. He's a PhD student at the School of Criminology at the University of Haifa, our home center, under the supervision of Professor Omer Rabinovich, Faculty of Law, and Dr. Avital Mentovich from the School of Criminology. He is a member of the IDIT Scholarship Honors Program for outstanding PhD students in the social sciences. Ronen holds a Master in Criminology with honors from the University of Haifa and an LLB from Netanya Academic College. Ronen is interested in the intersection between human behavior, crime, and criminal justice. His research is located in the intersection of social psychology and law as he explores the psychosocial mechanism of the way in which implicit biases underline the process of decision-making. In his current research, Ronen investigates how sexism and gender biases shape and systematically influence the decision-making of judges, other actors of the criminal justice system, and the general public. The topic of his presentation is sex and age on the bench, the influences of judges' gender and age on verdicts of sexual crime cases. Ronen, the floor is yours.
Okay. So first of all, thank you, Edo, and thank you, Danny, for having me today among all these interesting presentations we heard. So sex and age on the bench. Dr. Avital Mentovich, my advisor, and I were interested in the influence of judges' gender and age on verdicts of sexual offense cases in Israel. And if I were to ask all of you to name what is the most fundamental and crucial quality of a judge, I may assume that most of you, if not all of you, would name first and foremost neutrality and objectivity. So while once the judicial bench consisted only middle-aged white male judges, today the bench is much more varied. We have a lot more women judges, judges from different ethnic origins, different backgrounds, with different worldviews, and that hold different characteristics. The question is, does this influence case outcomes? Does this bring to different judging? There are two theoretical perspectives to answer this question. One is the legal formalism. The legal formalism theory will claim that it completely does not matter what the judge's background is, what their personal characteristics are, as judges decide cases based upon laws, precedents, and judicial norms. As opposed to that, the legal realism theory would assert that yes, of course, indeed, judges' background, judges' characteristics inevitably do influence their judging and influence case outcomes. Research in this area can be divided into three distinct categories. The first is judges as a social group. The question asked in this research is, for instance, do black and white judges judge in a different manner? Do male and female judges judge in a different manner? Jewish and Arab judges, etc. The second category is judges' characteristics and background in interaction with the background and characteristics of the litigants or defendants in criminal cases. So in this research, it studies dyads of, for instance, black and white judges with black and white defendants, male and female judges with male and female defendants. The third category is judges' characteristics and background in interaction with the issue in question in the specific trial. I'll explain for an instance a trial with a black judge presiding, where the issue of the trial is racial discrimination at the workplace. Clearly, this issue is salient to the black judge. My research, the influence of judges' gender and age in panels of sex crime cases, can fit into this third category. So previous research in this area, Perezi found that in sex discrimination cases, the presence of a female judge on panels, a three-judge panel, affected case outcomes. It affected case outcomes in favor of the plaintiffs of the sex discrimination. Later on, Boyd and her colleagues examined 13 different areas of law. of these 13 different areas, the influence of judges' gender was found only in one. Guess which one? Of course, sex discrimination. In sex discrimination cases, the presence of a female judge on panels increased the likelihood that the plaintiff will prevail in her suit. My hypothesis regarding gender in sex crime cases, the influence of judges' gender is that female judges will have a higher tendency to convict in sexual offense cases. This is because, first and foremost, as women, female judges are more vulnerable to fall victim to a sexual assault. Maybe some of them have already in their past been a victim to a sexual assault, and they are more vulnerable to this compared to their male counterparts, compared to male judges. Second is in-group favoritism, a theory from social psychology that asserts that as individuals, we will prefer the interests of other individuals that are from the same social group that we are. Based upon this notion, I would assume that female judges would prefer the interests of sex crime cases, victims of sex crime cases, and also potential victims of sex crime cases, and they will look for their interests by placing more defendants of sex crime cases behind bars. Now, sex crime cases in Israel are tried before a panel. How should the gender influence the panel? The hypothesis is, first of all, that the panel's gender composition will have a significant influence on conviction rates. Specifically, the presence of at least one female judge on panels should significantly raise conviction rates. On the other hand, or the other side of it, is a three-male composition, a composition of three male judges. A panel composition will have significantly lower conviction rates compared to all other panels that, of course, consist of a female judge. Regarding age, I believe that changing times lead to changing norms, meaning that younger individuals in our society compared to older individuals, perceive today's sexual misconduct in a more harsher manner. They are more intolerant to sexual misconduct and to sex crimes. Judges as lay people in society. Therefore, I would expect that younger judges will have a higher tendency to convict in sex crime cases. As a result, I expected a negative relationship, meaning that as judges age lower, conviction rates should rise. The methodology I used, I retrieved data from an Israeli database. I sampled all 6 district courts of Israel. All cases were, of course, non-plea bargain cases and unanimous verdicts. All victims were female. I omitted the few cases that consisted male victims. It was on a time span of 20 years between the years 1999 and 2019. I had a total of 367 cases. I retrieved the judge's date of birth and the date that they were appointed to court from the Israeli Judicial Authority's website that publishes their CDs. Additional variables I retrieved from the verdicts was the year of the verdict, whether the defendants or the victims were minor or adults, whether the crimes were committed inside the family or outside the family, the type of the offense, whether it was rape, sodomy, or sexual assault, whether it was one offense or multiple offenses, the district of the court, and as I said a minute ago, judges' seniority, how senior they are. All data that was retrieved was coded and then analyzed using SPSS. This is our case distribution. We won't delve into it too much, but I would like to point your attention to the all-female panel that I colored in red. And you can see that out of 367 verdicts, only 11 verdicts were given by a three-female panel, all-female panel. Analyzing the data in a chi-square model showed that there was indeed a significant effect of the panel's gender composition on conviction rates, and we can see that the all-female panel had 100% of conviction rates. But we treat this result with caution because, as I said earlier, we have only 11 verdicts. And anyway, analyzing the data again, this time using logistic regression, because we wanted to see how all the other variables influence case outcomes, we see that the gender's composition influence on case outcomes disappears. And the only significant variable that influenced case outcomes was the age of the oldest judge. This was significant. And the relationship was positive, meaning that as the oldest judge gets older, conviction rates rise. In another logistic regression model, we checked seniority. We examined seniority. It was in a different model because seniority is collinear with age. And again, we see that the gender composition had no significant influence on conviction rates, but the seniority of the most senior judge did. This was marginally significant. As the most senior judge in the panel is more senior, so conviction rates rise. Conclusions. Interestingly and surprisingly to me, the results contradicted my hypothesis because actually, the gender composition of the panel does not influence case outcomes in sex crime cases. While this is no result, this result is very important, in my opinion, because this may put at ease sexual crime case defendants and also sex crime case victims that their cases will be trialed with no underlying gender bias of the judges presiding in their cases. The second thing we can learn from this is that as judges become older and as they sit longer on the bench, they are more senior in their position, they become more harsher, even in these cases, and this even prevails any conception of younger judges being more liberal. And I believe we could see this trend also in other cases and not only in sex crime cases. So that's it. I thank you for your attention. I hope this was interesting for you. Again, thank you, Ido and Danny, for having me. My email is here. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to write me. I'll be glad to send you additional information. Thank you for listening.